right, you are in the kitchen with Jelly, and tonight it is Southern buttermilk cornbread, and it is a great thing to have and to know how to do. And I'm doing this as a beginners, and I would think if you're watching YouTube to know how to make cornbread, you might be a beginner. No big deal, because hey, I was too at one time. And it's really, really simple, and you can make it as complicated, or maybe not as complicated. You can make it complicated when it can be real easy. What I'm getting at is that right there. This is really all you need. That right there is my absolute go-to. I use it all the time. A lot of people I know that make Southern cornbread use that right there. They don't go to the trouble of mixing flour and cornmeal. It's already right here. The baking soda, everything you need is right here. And then top that off is, here's the directions that I use personally. I use everything you see right here, with exception of that right there. I do not put sugar in my cornbread. It's just not something I do. I mean, you may like it. I know people that do, maybe, but not a lot of people. Not where I'm from. But anyhow, like I said, I do vary on this sometimes. Sometimes I'll use butter. Sometimes I'll use lard instead of the Crisco that I got sitting right here. I mean, lard works great. It's all preference. People, you know, they'll coat their pan with butter instead of Crisco. But to stick to this, and I know it works. It works fantastic. We're going to stay with the Crisco. But anyhow, we're going to try and make this somewhat short. I'm not trying to keep it real short. If you're watching this as a beginner, you need to know a lot of these steps, and it's something you don't do in a hurry. It just ain't. I'm sorry. I mean, like, one thing I'll say is, like, right now we've got this oven at 425. I turned it on an hour ago, so the oven is preheated to 425. All right. Now the thing about that is that when we set this skillet in there, you know, this is just like the thing you might not think about. It's going to stay in there, in my opinion, 30 minutes. I mean, 20 at minimum. I want that hot. And you're going to need that right. You're going to need a good glove. Sometimes I use two. You see I got two laying there. Because the reason this thing, the cast iron skillet, cooks cornbread so good is the same reason you don't walk around with it in your hand. I mean, once you take it out of the oven, you want to get to where you're going with it and set it down. It's hot, and if you've got a thin, or it don't even have to be thin, it can be a decent, glove or whatever you're using, and it'll still get hot on your hand. And if you're not careful, you know, you want to, like I said, you just want somewhere to go with it and put it down. But this recipe calls for a large egg and a cup and a half. We're going to put all that in here. We're going to put the buttermilk. I use buttermilk. You can use milk, blah, blah, blah. You can use, normally I do use regular buttermilk. Tonight I couldn't get anything but the reduced fat. It's no big deal. I guarantee you it doesn't mean that much at the end result. So I like buttermilk, though. I'm going to use buttermilk every time I can. And then that butter you see here, it's nothing but for in a little bit. I'm letting it soften, because I'll use it to put on my cornbread when I got it done. That's why I'm not crazy. I can, and I do sometimes put butter in it, but you don't have to, because take my word, when I'm eating cornbread, that you don't need any butter flavor added to the cornbread itself. I'm going to put enough on it that it doesn't need any more. So anyhow, we're going to get this in here, and while this, you know, I'm going to coat this pan with Crisco, and I'll probably do this on a video. And just to tell you, I'm going to put a cup and a half of the buttermilk and that egg. All right, now while that pan preheats for 20 to 30 minutes, this can be coming to room temperature. I'm saying this and the egg, because it just came out of the refrigerator. I do like a glass bowl just because of that. It'll help, you know, take some of the cool, you know, try and regulate the temperature, get it to closer to room temperature. I always try and cook everything, you know, any liquids. I don't like them straight out of the refrigerator for any recipe I'm doing. But anyhow, that's what we're going to do in just a second, and I'm going to set this camera down and get a few things lined up, and we're going to start this. But like I said, I'll be back shortly. Okay, the first thing you want to do once your oven is preheated, is you want to get your skillet ready and get it in the oven where it can get preheated. This is a 9-inch Griswold. I love the skillet. This is all I use it for, is cornbread. Now, this right here, it calls for like a 1/4 cup of Crisco shortening or vegetable oil. I had the wet vegetable oil. I actually had a Best Blend sitting out a while ago. I'm not going to use it at all. I had it there. I hardly ever use this but you can, is what it's saying. And I've never tried it, so I honestly can't speak for it because this is what I use. But you could do it with that if that's all you had. It's no crisis. You get the bag of the cornmeal mix and you're good to go. But anyhow, it wants a 1/4 cup of that. Well, I'm going to guess that. And that might be a little much, but here's the thing. I mean, what I do is get it in my hand. I'm not wasting a nickel. You know, I mean, it's really, even if I put some in the garbage when I'm done with this, I want to make sure I get my pan covered all the way around and everywhere with extra. And the extra, you'll see in a minute what I do with it, and a lot of people do. And I mean, I'm going a little heavy on it. And but the thing is when this gets hot and that melts, you're going to get some liquid shortening. Well, we're going to pour that in the mix. Once we get it mixed up, and once we get the mix ready to go in the pan, we will pour the melted hot shortening in it. So I don't care if I got a little extra or a lot extra. It just adds more to the cornbread. But the main thing is, get your pan covered all the way around. It's not going to hurt anything. So now I've got to obviously clean my hands, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to set that in the oven. But I'll be right back. Okay, now all we got to do is move this to the oven. Now the oven I have set at, well, I'm aiming at the wrong one, but I'm going to fix that. I've got the oven set at around the middle of the oven. I mean, I don't want it too high, I don't want it too low. So I got the set right about in the middle of the oven, my rack, 425 again. Now all we're going to do, as a matter of fact, we'll set a timer. I'm going to say 30 minutes. And even if we don't leave in there 30 minutes, I know when 30 minutes is up, because I want at least 20 minutes on that, because this is what it means a lot to me. It browns it. It does a lot. You know, you'll see when you pour it in there, it sizzles. It gets everything going right there at the surface of that pan. Although you can't see in there that well. But anyhow, we'll be back in a minute. I'm going to mix everything up in probably about 15 minutes. I'll start mixing stuff up because I don't want it to sit too long. You know, you don't want it to sit there and it'll start rising. So you want to mix it at the last minute. Again, this is a beginner's video. So, I mean, I know a lot of people know this, but I just wanted to say that. So, anyhow, we're going to give this a few minutes to heat, and we'll come back, and when I feel it's a good time to start mixing, we will. But anyhow, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so now that we've got the skillet in the oven, and it's getting hot, we're going to put our buttermilk, 1.5 cups, in here just to get it to somewhat room temperature. Now, I'm not going to lie, you're not going to use in a 9-inch skillet like I have everything this calls for, but for whatever purposes, I'm mixing as they call for on the back, just so you can kind of see it. And you know what, if you pour some out, you know, you don't need it all. We're really talking about pennies, or you know, less than $1. I don't even know where it'd be cheap. So you just make it like the direction says. That way you don't have to worry about whether don't worry about waste. In other words, it's not as much as you think it is. So long story short, I'm going to let that sit right here and come somewhat to temperature. You know, it's not going to hurt. It's going to get closer to room temperature than it was while my skillet stays in here for the 20 or 30 minutes. But be back in a minute. Okay, we are at 8 minutes on the timer on the oven, so the skillet's been in there 22 minutes. All right, now I have stirred this or whisked it around a little bit, the egg and the buttermilk, so it's sitting there ready. Here is 2 cups of the cornmeal mix, I'm going to put it all in there. And there's a lot of ways of doing this. You can add one or the other, but because the instructions call for 2 cups on the bag, and I know we're not going to need all of it, I'm doing it for video purposes. That's only. Now, I will say this. Don't put this away, because if we don't have enough liquid, we'll add it. It's, you know, and it's not going to hurt anything. It's the same thing we're adding. So, anyhow, let me see if I've got this where you can see what's going on. Hang on just a minute. Let's see. That ought to be pretty close right there. So, like I said, it's a beginner's video. But are you looking for my consistency? I look for is, you know something? I'll say this right quick before I forget. Is you don't put either away. I've set the cornmeal in there, but if you get too much liquid, you just add some cornmeal or the cornmeal mix to it. If you get, if you don't have enough liquid, then obviously you add some buttermilk. It really is simple, y'all. I'm telling you, if you've never made cornbread, if somebody in your family's wanting it, and you want to make some dang good cornbread, this is it. You ain't got to get no more complicated than this right here. Now, I won't lie. It would have been better. It would be better to have had that cornmeal sitting here in case you go too far. But you know where it is. I do too. I know where mine's at. I can go get it. So my point is, right there is going to be really close to what I want. You see, it's a pourable texture or consistency or whatever you want to say, and that right there is really, really close. In fact, what I tell you what I'm getting at is when I pour it in that pan, I want it to flatten out like that. If you got it too thick, it doesn't do that. This is, you know what I'm gonna call it perfect. I'm gonna put just a touch, just for the sake of doing it, just to show you it takes a good bit to mess this up. It really does. You could have it way liquidier than that, or I like that word. You can have it a lot runnier than that, and it would be fine. Now, if you had it way tighter than that, maybe not. You need it to flow out in the pan. So we're going to pull that pan out, and then you'll see when I do, I'm going to pour that hot shortening into here and mix it as I go. And you can see these right here. I don't like using these with cornbread mix because it gets hung in between here, and it balls up sometimes before it gets enough, the consistency gets right. And if you're going to, I just wouldn't, but if you're going to, make sure you get a big one like this. A small one is really hard to use. So we're going to move some of this. I'm going to set the cornbread pan right here because I'm ready for it. I don't know if you can see that in the video. Let's move that over here. I'm going to set the cornbread pan on this hot pad, and before I do, I'm going to pour. I don't want to sit here too long because you can see it's already trying to rise. So we got to, it ain't something you want to stand around all day. It's not going to hurt that big. It's not going to be that big of a deal. But you don't want to sit around all day. In fact, we're going to move this back just a little bit. I'm going to set the pan there. I'm going to pour the liquid in there and mix that in. And right here we go. You're going to hear it sizzle. The reason is because it's hot. Now you can mix that around just a little bit. Try to sling it up on your corners around the edges of the pan a little bit. And mix this right here in. Now you see the Crisco that's in there, so it's built in now to the thing. So it's not going to matter if it's not on the sides real good of the pan, in my opinion. So anyhow, here we go. We're going to pour this in here to the level we want it, and I think you can see that. I'm going to move this just a touch. And what we want is this right here. And you can hear it doing its thing. And you know what? We may be going to use a lot of this, the majority of this, because I don't like cornbread way high in the pan anyhow. I like about, I'm going to say, a third of the pan filled. So honestly, I used a lot more than I thought I would this time. I don't know if it's, anyhow, but long story short, every time you do it, it's a little bit different, So I'm going to show you when we put this in there. That right there is a little higher than I would like it, but that's using every bit of it, so you don't have to worry about the waste. It's not going to make a big deal, but this rises. I don't like a real thick cornbread, but we'll describe that in a minute. We got to get this back in the oven and let that flow out, and you'll see what I mean. We're going to go back to the oven with it. And like I said, make sure you got a decent thing to hold it with, because they're not the cheapest thing you've ever. I mean, they're not. They're hot, in other words. And my camera's acting up just a touch. My tripod is. But you can see it. It's in the oven now, and we're down to 2 minutes right here. So that was 28 minutes. I left that in there, and now I'm going to set it again to. I'm going to set it to 30 minutes. Because I think it calls for 25 to 30. I'll just watch it. But I want 30 on there so I can come by here and look right quick and see, where I'm at. So, in a minute, we'll come back here and I'll show you this again. But that is Southern cornbread in the makings. Now, like I said, we'll see it here in just a minute. But there we go. I'll just stop with that. And in a minute, we'll take a look at it again. But I'll be right back. All right, for the record, at 10 minutes in, you can see how well it flowed out, and it, smoothed out on top, and you can see it coming together right there. That is going to be, I promise, some fantastic cornbread. And if somebody in your family or you or whoever wants some cornbread, don't do it because you're worried about it. This is the easiest thing you can make. But anyhow, I'm gonna get off all that. We're gonna let that cook for few more minutes and see, and in a minute I'll show you how I tell when it's done. And I mean, that's sometimes I might, it might be more than 30 minutes. I might go over the time we got set. There's nothing set hard here, and you can miss it. My point is by a good bit, and it's still fantastic. Now I'm on a hush. We're going to go to the next step here in just a second. There's like 2 more things I want to say about this right quick when we got time, and that is, that is my go-to. That's my favorite, but I have others I've used, and I use them sometimes when I can't find this. I have another kind I use, but all you're looking for is cornmeal mix, and maybe a picture of cornbread on the front of it. That means, in my opinion, that means it's good to go. Here's a different kind. This is Martha White. It's cornmeal mix, and it is also ready for, it's self-rising, but they're all the same. I mean, what I'm getting at is, if you can't find White Lily, and maybe if you can't find Martha White, you can probably find a different. The only thing I look for is one that doesn't have sugar, and that's just because, in my opinion, and that's all it is. But my opinion, that I don't particularly like the ones with sugar. I don't want a sweet cornbread. I want it for pinto beans and for collard greens and for 100 things. I mean, people put buttermilk. I mean, they literally put their cornbread in just buttermilk with an onion or something. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to eat cornbread. It is fantastic, and it grows on you. When you eat it a little while, it grows on you. I didn't eat it as a kid. I didn't eat it till I was probably 30 years old. I'm quite over that now. But anyhow, it's a great, easy thing to cook, and it goes great with a lot of different dishes, not all, but a lot. So anyhow, just to let you know, you don't have to find this particular brand. Anything with the cornmeal mix written on it, and like I said, as sad as it sounds, but if it's got a picture of a cornbread pan of cornbread on the front of it, or cornbread on it, that's probably all you need. But anyhow, now you know. Okay, the timer just ended, and it looks fantastic. So I'm going to get this camera set up over there. We're going to pull it out. I'll show you, if I can, what I look for, which is make sure the cornbread has pulled away from the edge of the pan. But you can't hardly tell in this, but I never open the oven until I'm ready to pull my cornbread or anything I'm cooking out. So anyhow, we're going to get that set up, get the camera set up, and I will be right back. Okay, here we go. Cornbread on the way over there. It looks as good as always. It's fantastic, and like I said, you don't want to walk around with this skillet in your hand, even with a holder on it, because is somewhat hot. All right, now this is a little overkill, but I put it, and you'll see it comes right out of here perfect. I put it on, sometimes, I mean, it's according to how I'm doing it. If I'm fixing to eat this or I'm fixing to serve it, I put it straight on that plate right over there. I mean, it doesn't hurt. The main thing I would say is this gives it a little air to breathe. I would never, personally, I would never put it on that plate and cover it with aluminum foil. I don't think that's the thing to do. You can even leave it in the skillet. I mean, you can see how it turned loose. Black iron is, a cast iron skillet is impossible to beat cooking cornbread. I don't know how people do it with other things, but not like this. So what I'm getting at is, if you're going to serve it right away, put it right on this plate, and then put it on the table, cut it up, let people have it. I mean, you can hear that. I mean, that's what the crispy crust is what makes cornbread, to me, cornbread. So anyhow, I'll hush. We're going to let this sit for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm going to put it on that plate. I'm going to slice me off a piece, put some butter on it, and of course eat it. But be right back. I wanted to kind of show this. I mean, this is why I put it on this. I mean, this, like I said, it's a little overkill, but if you see right there, I mean, it's breathing. It's been on there about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, and it kind of lets the air circulate around it. And you know, if you don't, like, again, this is a step you don't have to do. But anyhow, I just wanted to show that there's a lot of moisture in cornbread. So if you can let it breathe, you do. But you don't want to get cold because you want to put butter on it in just a minute. So that's what we're about to do. I'm going to sit down, cut a piece, and butter it up and eat it. All right, well, now it's time to see how it did. And I tell you what, we're going to cut it in half. And you heard it. It is fantastic, I'll promise you. Every single time. It's simple to do. And if you like, or if you think you like cornbread, follow the instructions on the back of one of those bags. You can't beat it. So here's what I do. I mean, if I don't have beans, or if I don't have collard greens, or whatever, right here, cornbread. I'm not sure what happened, but the camera cut off for whatever reason. But anyhow, what I'm getting at is, this is Southern cornbread. That is it right there. It is fantastic. You can't, I ain't gonna say you can't mess it up, but it's pretty hard to mess up. And I promise you, you'll not, you can do a lot of things, and you can't get much better than just right off of the bag instructions, and using like I do, White Lily, you know, even the Martha White. But anyhow, you see, I like a lot of butter on mine. That's why I don't put it in the mix. It doesn't matter. It is fantastic, I promise. And if I had, and I should have cooked some other things to put with it, like pinto beans. I can go on and on. Pinto beans, collard greens, you name it. You know what goes good with cornbread. But let me tell you something. You can't beat this. It is absolutely the best cornbread. Again, I know people that Southern cooks that's cooked for years, and this is the exact same recipe they use. And that is why. That's perfect. I mean, it is perfect cornbread. And it's simple. So, if you want cornbread, and you're watching this video, and you're a beginner, this is the way to do it. Don't go through, I mean, you don't have to go through all those steps. Buy the bag that says, you know, cornmeal mix. Again, got a picture of cornbread on front of it. You know, make sure it's cornmeal mix. I'm not saying something might not. And honestly, I'd say, look, make sure it doesn't have sugar in it. I'm not down on it. I'm not saying that's horrible. It's just not Southern, if you ask me. So, anyhow, In the Kitchen with Jelly. Like and subscribe if you don't mind, but it's not a big deal if you don't. Just hopefully you learn from the videos. That's all I want. And I know I'm hard to find. You can find me at www.jelly007.com. And that's my website. And all it does is direct you, at this time, all it does is direct you to my YouTube page. That's it. It takes you to my YouTube page, and there's no advertisements or anything on there at the time. And I may one day if this takes off. But right now, it's just, it directs you straight to my YouTube channel. So, anyhow, again, In the Kitchen with Jelly, y'all have a good night, and cook some cornbread. See y'all later.